The next several wars on this list are nationalist wars of sort of national unification. The war in Italy in 1859 is basically Piedmont, Sardinia allies itself with France. Remember, that's what Cavour does. And then it provokes war with Austria. The French are able to defeat the Austrians. And in the midst of this conflict, the northern Italian states rise up in revolution against the Austrians. And many of them join Piedmont, Sardinia, except Venice, which the Austrians will continue to control. And then in the aftermath of this, Garibaldi will take his red shirts down into Sicily and will move up and conquer there. And then, Garibaldi will turn that territory over to King Victor Emmanuel of Italy, the first king of Italy. And so Cavour will create this national union. Then our two key wars in German unification. Remember, Germany doesn't just come together magically because of some sense of national glory and love the need to come together. Germany comes together because Prussia maneuvers to get all the German states under its control. And how does it do this? Well, it makes those German states realize that they need Prussia to defend themselves from these other guys, Austria and France. So the Austro-Prussian War is in 1866, and in this conflict, Austria is defeated quickly. What is it, 7 weeks war, 6 weeks war? It's 7 weeks war. So it happens so quickly that these countries that historically would never have wanted Prussia to become the dominant power in Germany, France under, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte's doing stuff overseas in Mexico and dealing with all sorts of other issues. It's distracted. And Russia is undergoing at this very moment in history the process of emancipating the serfs and undergoing all these internal changes. And so, and Britain at this point is also being very isolationist. They're not involved in the continent. And so Prussia is able to defeat the Austrians and create the North German Confederation, where Prussia will control all of North Germany. And then the French wake up and realize this is the worst case scenario, the thing they've been fearing from the beginning of our course, which is consolidation over all the Germans. And so the French decide that they want to stop this from happening. And so when this silly reason, right, if you remember, again, we've got the Spanish throne dying out. The Spanish decide to offer the crown to the Hohenzollern family, to the Prussian family. The French are up in arms. They don't want to be surrounded by Prussians. They've already been surrounded by Habsburgs, and so they don't want that to happen. And so the Hohenzollern king just says, no, I won't take the throne. But Bismarck edits his statements in what's known as the Ems Dispatch. Bismarck edits his statements to make it sound like he offended or like he's dissing the French diplomat. And there's a fury in France about, not just about how now the Prussians are so strong and a threat, but a fury about their cocky attitude and how they've treated this French, ambassador. And so Louis Napoleon Bonaparte uses this, or Napoleon III now, uses this as his reason to go to war. And he declares war against the Prussians. And before you can say, I don't know what word would be appropriate. But very quickly, before you can say, I need allies, I guess, France is defeated. Napoleon III himself is captured in the war, right? And France is defeated, and of course, the Prussians, surround Paris, and all the German kings go to, Versailles. And they realize the only way they can be secure and safe is if they join together in a strong state. And so all those German princes agree to the creation of the German Empire with the Prussian king now as the German emperor. And so we have a new German emperor, not from the Habsburg family, but from the Prussian Hohenzollern family. and he will now control this very important country. And Germany is, of course, very industrially developed, right? It's undergoing industrialization. It very soon after this passes Britain in its steel production and in other industrial indicators in its overall production of items. It begins to construct a navy and all this stuff. Germany is now the big power, and so of course that leads us to World War I because they don't like that. France and Britain don't like that, and so they're going to oppose and be very fearful of Germany. Yes?
Who exactly is Metternich? Like, what?
No, Metternich. How did Metternich not come up in this entire conversation? Metternich is the Austrian diplomat and minister. He's sort of the government minister after the Napoleon era. So he is the leader of the Austrian government. Now remember, there's a king, but kings use their ministers to actually figure things out and have policies. So Metternich is that chief minister of government. And he's also the diplomat for Austria at the Congress of Vienna. So Metternich will be very conservative because he wants to resist liberal ideas and nationalism, both of which Napoleon spread. He wants to resist liberal ideas because they're going to upset his government's control. After all, he works for a king. And obviously he wants to stop nationalist ideas because Austria is not a nation. It's full of all these different national groups or ethnic groups, each of which have their own nationalist ideas. And so the ideas that come out of the French Revolution are an existential threat to the Austrian Empire. Now, yes, it takes virtually 100 years, 1815 to 1919 with the final collapse of the Austrian Empire, for the Austrian Empire to be destroyed by the very forces that Napoleon and the French Revolution unleash upon Europe. But it does happen eventually, despite Metternich's attempts to stop it. So exciting.
Why is it considered like the age of Metternich?
Because his conservative ideas about resisting liberal and nationalist ideas are the dominant political ideas. Are the dominant ideas amongst governments, right? And so the first half of the 1800s is just this amazing time because you have all sorts of demands for reforms. These ideas, whoa, what's going on right now in Egypt, right? We've got these ideas. Where did these ideas come from? Oh, we should be able to vote. We should be able to have this. People have been around for hundreds of years, and they've lived in tyranny, and they've lived in poverty. But now, these ideas spread, and the power of powerful ideas is we see it. And so Napoleon spreads these French revolutionary ideals. And so Metternich will be the sort of figurehead. He's sort of this symbol and the leading diplomat who will be resisting those ideas. He'll be getting Russia and the other major countries to resist the spread of those ideas across Europe. Now, of course, those ideas explode in the revolutions in 1848. Metternich himself has to flee from Vienna. And so in the aftermath of that, we'll see the lack of that strong conservative leader will mean that movements for national unification and liberal movements across Europe will spread in the second half of the 19th century. And so we'll get German unification, we'll get Italian unification, we'll get a republic, the Third Republic in France, and other things like this. These liberal and nationalist ideas will spread. So if the age of Metternich is this conservative political era in the first half of the century, the second half is characterized by the dynamic spread of liberal and nationalist ideas.